My name is Ayomide. Welcome to the World Without People podcast, where we journey into some pretty amazing stories of everyday people. I believe strongly in the interconnectedness of our human experience, that we can color and enrich our lives by sharing and learning from our lived experiences. In this concise podcast, I bring to you engaging conversations like a chapter in a vibrant book designed to motivate and encourage and challenge and, of course, brighten your day. My guests also get to ask me one question, and there's no telling what they might come up with. So thank you for tuning in. Grab your coffee or tea or listen on the go to some amazing stories of real people. After all, what is a world without people? Welcome, everybody, to another episode of The World Without People. My name is Ayomide, and I'm so glad that you guys are joining me today. I can't wait to have this conversation with my guest. His name is Baba Agba. Am I saying that right?
Yeah,
It's a very unique name. I love it. And Baba is a cinematographer, photographer, as well as a producer in the Nigerian. Well, not, I won't. I don't want to limit it in the film industry, but right now, at the moment, you're in Nigeria. And so we're going to talk about the Nigerian film industry for the most part, and then go from there. Welcome, Baba.
thank you.
You're officially my first guest that I have not met in person, even though we've been following each other for years on social media. But this is really cool. I love it. All right. But like I mentioned, producer, cinematographer. I'm gonna have to say that thing several times today, and I don't know how to say it. And producer, and but you didn't start that way, right? Like, so tell us a little bit about that, because what you studied is so much different from what you're doing right now. And I want to understand how that transition happened.
So it all started with, photography and to some extent videos, but I've always taken pictures. I've always played around with cameras. So when I was much younger, probably 6, 7, 8, I always used to use my dad's camcorder to record basically, what you probably would call vlogs now, mini documentaries on road trips to go see my grandma for Christmas. To spend Christmas with my grandma. So, driving from Warri to Auchi, I'd be shooting everything we're going by, telling you about the towns we're going by, what they're known for, and just shooting out the window, that kind of stuff. So I've always played around with cameras, you know, for a long time. And then it sort of didn't exist like that. Like, sort of, I'll play around with my dad's camera, that kind of thing, but it wasn't something I was focused on. In my youth, I was more obsessed with football back in the day.
Makes sense.
and and then sort of it just came back again. So while I was in A levels in England, I just sort of at the end of the first year, for some reason, I wanted a camera. I can't remember how I arrived at that, but I wanted a camera, and then I sort of got a camera that summer. I started shooting pictures, just it sort of just drifted from there. So I guess that was when I came back to photography, or that's when I had my own first camera. Like, this is my camera, and from then it was just it just went off. But looking back, it's a bit weird because I got the camera for my birthday that summer. So that summer, like a few weeks after, thereabouts, or just coming back from holiday, my granddad, my mom's dad, passed away.
Hmm.
But he was a photographer, like in his youth.
Okay.
And it's something I always heard my mom talk about. Like, he always had all these rolls of film and all this stuff and whatnot. So, but I never really got to see it because, you know, as at the time when I was younger, much younger, he wasn't really taking pictures or really displaying anything around. So if you ask me, I would say I get it from him.
Right.
Since then I've gone hunting for his own stuff. I didn't really find much. I found some. I think I found probably like a roll, an old roll, and then I found his old photo book. Then he used to have a lot of pen pals, like all over the world, Australia, New Zealand, that kind of thing. And this was like in the 50s, 60s.
Right.
70s. And my mom always told me about, you know, him and his pen pals and all that stuff. And they used to send themselves pictures, their families, all that stuff,
Nice.
where they live, their countries. So I've seen all of that, and then some prints he had tucked away.
Right.
And I've seen some interesting things. So I mean, he was friends with a contemporary of Alonge, who's now famous
Okay.
for taking sort of the Benin royal court pictures from back in the day. What interesting thing is that going through my granddad's archive, I found a reverse of a famous picture that I feel is even more interesting potentially than the famous picture. So the
Mm,
famous picture is the one of Oba Kenzua greeting the Queen when she came to Benin in 1956,
right.
and you know, you see them, you know, picture. Alonga took that picture,
Right.
but I found a picture that seems to be from the terminal building, so much further back. But in that one, you see the plane, you see the stairwell, you see the, you know, the tail number of the flight, you see Prince Philip standing a few paces behind, you see Awolowo and the other people standing a few paces behind from the Oba. You sort of see the whole scene, so it's
Nice.
quite interesting.
Oh, very
Um,
nice.
yeah, but I mean, his dad was like the one that took the queen around when she came. So, and he was always with his dad. So, and he worked with his dad. So that made sense
Right.
why that was in his album. But you know, you see pictures like from Benin at that time and life then and all this stuff, and it was like, you know, it's like a glimpse into a life long ago. But yeah, so I feel that's where I get it from, and my love for images. That's where it comes from. And my mom as well. Like my parents love art. My mom studied English literature. My dad studied economics as well, but loves music. But my mom always used to watch films and all that stuff. Apparently, when I was like a kid, that's all we did together. So yeah, I think it really comes from that side.
Makes sense. But I guess my question is why even go into economics in the first place then?
I like economics. I love it
Really?
as well. I mean, I like market dynamics. I like, you know, I'm a curious person. Like, I like a lot of things. You probably get freaked out by how much I know about a lot of different things. So I think I'm just a curious person in general. And I think the nature of economics as a science, but a social science, and sort of looking at life, humanity from a certain perspective works for me. And it's sort of like, to be honest, finishing, it was more like I was good at economics and I was good at, let's say, physics, like finishing secondary school. It was
Right.
like, oh, what do you want to be? And I'm like, yeah, maybe an engineer in economics, like a mechanical engineer in economics. So I did A levels and then physics got hard. Like, it was cool, but it was getting more difficult. And I was like, yo, I can't do this. I enjoy economics more. So I dropped it. But math, geography, that kind of stuff, I stayed with those. So like, I'm interested in stuff. I'm curious. Like, I'm interested in the world and people and places and societies and how they're organized and all that stuff, which in a weird way lends itself to filmmaking,
Absolutely.
especially producing,
Yeah.
because, you know, producing is really about all that stuff as well and having a certain kind of outlook. So yeah, well, it at the time it just seemed like, oh, the thing you could do that made sense that I liked,
Right.
but as you know, sort of growing up or schooling in Nigeria until maybe recently, there weren't really alternative professions that you could think of, or it wasn't like all these things were an option, or like careers that you could have conversations with people about. Like, it's not that anybody discouraged you because you wanted to do it. I mean, that happened with some people, but it just wasn't like a career option that existed,
Right.
that was in anyone's consciousness. So you probably find that a lot of people doing stuff now, their selves, maybe their 12, 13, 14, 15-year-old selves, never even had an idea that these things exist,
Absolutely.
in terms of, yeah, it's out there, but that people actually do them as jobs and make a living from them, and can be quite successful.
Thinking about where you started from as a photographer, like you mentioned, what do you think about the fact that phones have kind of they're competing for the same attention? They don't, they're almost competing for standalone or with standalone cameras. How do you think that has kind of brought changes into maybe how you do your work? What the competition, even change the economics, like you're saying, around even say, for example, like asking someone to pay for your services.
It's an interesting one. It's a double-edged sword, as with everything. I think in one breath, it's really sort of expanded the marketplace to an extent, and I think with what's happened globally in the last, let me say, 20 years or so, probably more in the last 15 actually, but we have had this, let me say, explosion of visuals. So I refer to it as the democratization of the camera, and with sort of democratization of that sort of photographic technology going from, you had to have like a point and shoot camera back in the day. Then, digital sort of came in, but digital was still there trying to figure it out, and it was still quite expensive. But sort of the democratization of digital photography and image capture,
Right.
and then that cascading into pretty much every phone.
Right.
And then, it was in every phone, but the quality wasn't really anything. And then it's gotten to the point that it's at. It's been a very, very powerful tool in terms of, you've just liberated people and allowed them to tell stories. So from a pure, let's say, storytelling point of view, because at the end of the day, film is storytelling, and it's about storytelling. And like, let's strip it away from how we might approach it, because what people think when you say film, they'll probably just think of cinema and movies.
Right.
But if you look at it sort of from an audiovisual point of view, it's everything. It's music videos, it's commercials, it's documentaries, it's what we refer to now as content, be it on Instagram or TikTok or Twitter or any of all these different social media platforms, right? And it's basically allowed everybody to express themselves, to sort of put their voice out there. Because I mean, you could have a great idea and have things you wanted to do and tell and say and whatever, but if you didn't really have the technology to express yourself, nobody would know. So it's like a painter having no canvas and no brushes and no paints.
Right.
So in that breath, it's great because the volume of stuff that's coming out, the diversification of voices, the diversity of perspectives, and just the liberation and sort of that freedom of expression
Right.
is amazing. Downside is, and this is coming from a more, let me not necessarily say high end, but from a more traditional point of view, and even looking at it from a more cinematic point of view, is that, cinema, like, let me use cinema for example. It's a language, as it's not just, it's a language, just the way music is a language and you have musical language. So the problem you might see now is people who don't necessarily know or understand the language, and they, let me not say misuse it, but they sort of do things however they want to do that might not conform. But then some people might argue that maybe they are developing new languages. And you could go into this philosophical argument of what is right, what is wrong. Are people just being traditionalists and not wanting to move forward? Or is it just a case of whatever? But I mean, at the end of the day, what you have to realize is, as with certain disciplines, certain things and rules have been created. And it's not that you must follow those rules, but it's just that they exist and they work for a reason. Now, even if you choose to break them, you break them for a reason. And I guess the key thing there is intent. So how this comes in is, I said, okay, you said I'm a producer and I'm a cinematographer, right? What's a cinematographer? A cinematographer is also known as a director of photography. Is somebody that captures moving images, paints with lights, photography basically in motion.
Right.
And that's completely different from a director who's just directing actors and the story. That's different from a producer that's putting a project together, bringing around the creatives, developing ideas. And they're all storytellers.
Right.
They're all filmmakers. The set designers are also filmmakers. The actors are also filmmakers. Everybody in the ecosystem is a filmmaker. The problem now is you go from a scenario where you might need, let me say, 7 or 8 different departments and specialist skills to create maybe a 1 minute commercial. So one person with an iPhone or Samsung phone basically can sit and be anywhere and just do whatever they want, which is a beautiful thing. The problem sometimes is maybe not necessarily the people creating, but maybe the people consuming and curating have not been able to segment things in a right way that allows for, let me say, the right appreciation and the right development of the various segments of the audiovisual world. So, like, a film is a film, a TV series is a TV series, a music video is a music video, right? Content is content, like, quote unquote. So there's a place for everything in the modern world, and there's a use for everything. And yeah, they're going to start sort of rubbing off of each other. There's this certain level of osmosis that happens, and it's natural because everything evolves. But are we going to let some forms die off and be completely run over by some other forms? Are we going to develop the appreciation of various forms? Are we going to preserve them, right?
Right.
So what's this sort of place for archiving, for curation, for growing or promoting, for instance, the various languages that exist? So, things look different and feel different from when we were growing up, and that's fine, and it will always evolve. But sort of how are we curating that process and safeguarding that process?
Yeah. So AI is obviously disrupting your industry. And it's one thing, like you said, I think it's fine, or maybe not fine, but like I can see it makes sense with photography, but how is it going to disrupt cinematography? I cannot speak.
It's a weird one because, yeah, you create these images and, they work for whatever industry they're meant to work for. But the bigger problem, I guess, from the legal side is that AI works off programming, right?
Hmm.
So AI has to be programmed with images. Or let's say AI has to be built up in a way, then AI sort of takes over and imagines based on what it's been fed,
Right.
right? So it takes an impulse. So I don't know, let's say if you go and say, I need an image, and you put some sort of description and it creates something. It's interesting. I mean, the advertisers, the other segments of various things are going to like that because you know what, I can just do stuff.
Right.
For the creators, it's a terrible one just because it's like industrialization and factories moving to robots
Right.
in a sense, but you're doing that in the creative space. The bigger issue you then ask is that is AI able to have like a creative voice? Which I mean, with the fashion show stuff and the pictures you've seen and some other stuff like AI fashion show and all this stuff, you'll be scared because hey, at least from a stills point of view,
Right.
it looks like like they're you see the way the light falls, everything is almost like perfect.
Right.
Now, from the video point of view, I don't know. I mean, too like I don't know if AI probably AI I'm saying AI will probably get there
Right.
at some point. The one thing though that then hits my head, do I think robots will be able to, for instance, shoot, operate a camera or AI and like control stuff? Fine. So do I think that AI will be able to, for instance, shoot on a physical set? No, I don't really see that ever happening. And that might be very incredibly naive of me, but I'll tell you why.
Right.
Right? Now, do I see AI being able to computer generate a film
Exactly.
from a
That's
script
exactly.
or an animation, for instance?
Hmm.
Yeah. The bigger problem or issue that I see, and why maybe for the other side I'm not so scared, and why I also say it might be incredibly naive of me to not be that scared, because obviously technologies at this point in 5, 10, 20 years is going to get supercharged, is that in terms of cinema and let me say film, I said it's a language.
Right.
The question is, for instance, in film, what you're really trying to do is communicate emotion,
Mm.
right?
Mm.
And communicate a lot of deeper human things.
Mm.
Now, obviously, AI is being and programmed with all sorts. So, technically speaking, AI can achieve a sense of, let me say, high IQ that can help it create and generate these things. Would AI be able to do it on a level that can connect with human beings? It's left to be seen. It's
Yeah.
possible,
Yeah.
but I'm not so freaked out. You get what I mean?
Yeah.
Um,
Makes sense.
I'm not so freaked out, and like I said, it might be incredibly naive, but it's possible. I mean, even looking at it, like the one with the old people, you can see clearly it's not human beings.
Hmm.
Like at first glance, it looks like, but when you look at it, it doesn't have the texture. But I'm like, on the film side, especially like as a cinematographer, because I've had this conversation before, and it's like, oh, robots will be able to shoot stuff, and I'm like, I don't think it's bloody possible for robots to be able to shoot anything on set. Why? I'm not sure if they'll be able to connect. So let me give you an example. Have you heard like I think it was one of these radio stations they played in the club, 50 Cent featuring Tupac and Biggie,
Oh yes.
like
I heard of
singing.
it. I haven't heard the song. Yes, but I heard of it. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So, but the thing is that even with that and all the AI stuff I've heard of, oh, there's a Biggie track that AI just did, and where like one thing I always say with music or espouse with music is that there's a thing about music that has to do with connection. And I don't know how to define it or explain it, but I personally feel that that's the difference between songs and artists that blow up and don't.
Right.
That you can hear and feel and sense the genuineness and their realism and sort of just them.
Right.
I don't know how to express it, but you listen to a song, like listen to any song that has really moved and touched people and connected globally and everything. There's just something about it, like a certain je ne sais quoi you can't put your finger on, but it's really something that comes from the performers, the artists, the producers. That's really almost them pouring out their soul.
Yeah.
And in all the music I've heard AI do, that's what's lacking, the soul. So yeah, it sounds like Tupac, the flow is similar to Tupac or Biggie, but it's soulless.
Yeah.
So the deeper question is, are we going to get AI at the point that it's able to program a soul? And that's the same thing with film because it's all about soul. So when you watch Vicky Cristina Barcelona, it's about the emotions and the rest. So are we going to be able to program AI to understand human emotion and be able to feel it and have a sense of it and a sense of understanding of how human beings feel? Because one thing we should not forget is that let's forget about the commercialized, let me call it, content that comes out.
Right.
The thing with art and what makes art fascinating is not necessarily the complexity of art, but is the magic of art, is the ingenuity of it. It's that thing that you can't define, that just, the spirituality of it that just manifests. So the question is that is AI ever going to have that?
Yeah.
Can you program that? Can you program magic? So when Whiskey did Whiz Party or Pack Room or whatever, it's something that we didn't hear. You get what I mean? So you can't, like, art is creating new things and breaking new
Yeah.
frontiers. And then we're like, oh, we like this, and people copy it. And then somebody comes and does something that's like jumping. It's like technology that jumps the leap. So AI itself is a form of technology. But the problem is that it's only as good as what's programmed into it, like a library.
Yeah.
The question now is, will AI get to the point of human consciousness
Right.
and then have a soul and then be able to create and ideate independent of what has been programmed, but sort of creating new things and new concepts? And that's where, I mean, I don't know enough about AI to go into that, and I haven't gone to study enough about it and all that stuff. And maybe I'm being, again, highly ridiculously ignorant, but I don't see it happening because, I mean, now even with people, let me use an example of, you said everybody has an amazing camera in their iPhone or Samsung or whatever phone, right? And
Right.
everybody's like, I can shoot stuff, I can take great pictures, or the pictures are so fantastic. And yeah, you go and it's a sharp, clear picture, 4K video, everything. But is it really, really, really good or great? It's just, oh, you just done something, you've captured an image.
Right.
But is it art?
Yeah.
Can it stand on its own? Can it be framed and hung up in a gallery? So would you compare it to the works of Henri Cartier-Bresson? No. Will you compare it to, Annie Leibovitz? No. And you look at the great photographers that have existed, whether portrait photographers or photojournalists, like documentary photographers and the war photographers and all that stuff, and you look at the stuff they created, and it's like, can AI ever create anything like that? Okay, can me and my sharp iPhone, because everybody always looks at it in the sharpness of the colors, yeah, but that's not what makes art. I think we're focused too much sometimes on the technicalities of everything versus the actual quality of that thing. And like music, for instance, I think it would be difficult for AI because music is something that's programmed in you and is on some levels and extent a sort of spiritual thing.
Right.
And you can hear it in great music from everywhere in the world. Like, I mean, look at everybody that creates great music, and whether it's new or old, whether you listen to Dolly Parton, whether you listen to Johnny Coltrane, whether you listen to Wizkid or Burna Boy, whether you listen to Adele, you know, anything you listen to that really is there and stands the test of time, or Michael Jackson or whatever, you can hear the soul, the person. Whether it's Tina Turner or Aretha Franklin, Nina Simone, you can feel it. It gives you goosebumps.
Yeah.
And the question is that we're going to be able to program AI to give people goosebumps.
Yeah. No, I think you're 100% right. I think you answered the question just simply. It's connection, it's soul. So, but you did say something now, which is, I guess, let me ask it this way first. How much role do you have in influencing scripts?
Before I go in there, I'll just drop one thing, right?
Mhm.
What I see as more realistic is AI aiding jobs that already exist.
Mm.
So, like with animations, yeah, the AI can go and animate the whole film,
Right.
but the AI needs to be directed.
Right.
or like what it needs to be achieved needs to be put. So the question is that I don't think you can auto do it from programming. It's something that's going to have to be programmed into it, like step by step. So versus maybe hiring animators that are going to be like, oh, they're drawing this and they're doing
Right.
this. It might have to be somebody, or maybe instead of 20 animators, you have one,
Yeah.
and the director and the DP, and then they're sort of programming what they want that is a go. The problem is that is the AI going to learn from that and try and replicate it or use that, machine learning to do something
Yeah.
else? In terms of the script, so it depends. As a cinematographer, not too much. It depends, not really. But as a producer, a lot.
Okay.
Like it depends on who you want me to answer the question, or in what role you want me to answer the question.
Well, yes, I'm about to be a little petty in that I'm going to give it to us in general. Nigerian movie industry has improved. We no longer have that, the gunshots that are obviously fake, or the bad music and bad dramatic music, or the fake makeup. Because, like you said, all of this is filmmaking, or whatever you call it, right?
Yeah.
Film, right? But I still feel like Nigerian movies are hard to watch because I feel like we typically focus on the worst of the stories. We focus on stories that are just about party and looking lavish and all of that. And I feel like you would disagree. But I guess what would you say to someone like me, to be looking for to better appreciate Nigerian movies as it is right now?
Why do you say you think I would disagree?
Well, I mean, I figure that since you're in the industry, it might be hard to agree with me, but I'm just saying.
Okay, I mean, so yeah, you're right. Things have gotten better. Let's, quote unquote, better. And what I'll say is just generally, yes, you're right. Production values have improved, and everybody's getting better and moving forward in some way or somehow. On Nigerian movies being hard to watch or difficult to watch and all that stuff, I hear you. I don't necessarily disagree, but all I would say is that I think we need to put some, let me not say context or disclaimers, but let me say let's expand the horizon, right? You have a motion picture audio visual industry that encompasses so much. And let's say, you have the commercials, you have the music videos, you have the quote unquote films, you have the TV series, or let me say television, which would then break down into, your high end TV series, your telenovelas and soaps and all the other stuff in between, your web series, and there's a lot of stuff. Now, if we go strictly into film, quote unquote, it's this distinction between cinema and movies.
Right.
And then you probably ask me what is cinema and what's the difference between cinema and movies. But the bottom line is film or filmed content, let me say let me say film and TV, but let's say even more so film these days, I regard as the highest form of art.
Right.
And that is because it encompasses every single form of art.
Right.
So it's the most complicated to make. Music, you can just sit down, with let me say, and this is not to simplify it, right? But if you wanted to make it simply, you could have a producer, an artist who's also a writer, lock themselves in the room and do it. And somebody could say the same thing, that you could just take three people and a camera and go and lock yourself and shoot, right? This is correct. The thing now is that, of course, music gets more complicated and is more complicated. But the point of all of this is that in film, you're going to need music.
Right.
So it's an added layer that then goes from just, oh, I'm making a good song, I'm recording good music, to I'm recording or I'm creating music or I'm selecting music that fits whatever we're doing. And I think that whatever we're doing is the thing that then starts separating cinema and movies, quote unquote. And it's all about intentionality and choices and sort of a voice and vision and what's being said. Now, cinema at the end of the day really is dealing with people expressing viewpoints, conveying messages through feelings and emotions. Although we watch it and we hear dialogue, it's not really about the dialogue and all of that. It's really more about the emotional journey that you go through and that experience, which is why, it worked back in the day in the big black room where everybody has a communal experience. Generally speaking, I would say that element or that segment of the industry that reveres the art and tries to hold true to it and tries and strives to really hit those marks is very, very little. And so it doesn't get as much prominence and it doesn't get as much visibility as the other part of the industry that is more about sort of the aesthetics. Like you say, oh, we're doing the parties, the club scene, lavish cars, girls, guys, suits, honks, oh, boy meets woman, relationship wahala, and all this other stuff, right?
Yeah.
And it really comes down to, like I said, there's a, everything is there for everybody to create, and the market is going to pick and choose.
Mm.
But you do have the type of films that you are looking for. So, for instance, or type of movies or cinema. So, for instance, there's a film called Eimo Fair. This is My Desire. I don't know if you've heard about it.
I
Um,
did. I just haven't watched it.
okay, but it was produced in Nigeria by Nigerians, Nigerian directors, writer directors. The film is the first Nigerian film to get into any of the major three film festivals as an official selection.
Okay.
After that, it got picked up by Criterion Collection, which is, in terms of as a stamp of, yes, being legit from a creative and artistic point of view, it doesn't get much higher because their own work is to curate and preserve world cinema. So they basically pick the best of the best and sort of put it there. And they also gave the film a US theatrical release, which is one of, I don't know if it's the first, but I sense it, I think it's the first Nigerian film to have a theatrical release.
Okay.
And I was in Berlin when it premiered. I watched it at the premiere. I was there with them at the other screening. And it was a packed house, amazing reception from global film community, a lot of interest, got programmed into other film festivals, it traveled, the directors have gotten quite a lot of projection from that. And that is something that will fit into what you're talking about. I mean, you could probably just Google and see the trailer and you would get a sense of what I'm talking about. And it focuses on what you might class as maybe a deeper story
Right.
told in a deeper way,
Right.
maybe more refined way, and a bit more delicate. But those kinds of films exist, but there are not that many.
Mm.
So what you often find is that the films that go to the film festivals, that win the awards on the international level, that break through and are getting reviewed or getting chatter, never, ever, ever, most times ever get released commercially in Nigeria.
Mm.
Or even if they do, they're never really pushed or understood or accepted in a way, so they always flop. So you never hear about them. So you could almost do a list of all the films that have gone into film festivals, in development labs, all the filmmakers that they've traveled and done all this stuff, and then ask, oh, how many films have they ever had released in Nigeria?
Mm.
And to be a very, very short list, like probably not up to five.
Why is
Whereas on
that?
the other list, probably like 20. It's the market perception thing. And we also this is why I talked about sort of the developmental side of the market in terms of, there are two things. The people that curate feel that the market is not going to respond to those films favorably because the market hasn't responded to what they see or sense as similar films favorably. But the question we have to ask is, why did the market not respond? Is it really the films, or maybe how they're pushed or packaged or marketed, right? And then you know, once that happens, you're not really going to get anything out. And of course, like I said, art and all these things are people breaking new ground and creating something new. A movie that comes out and everybody's like, wow, 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 we've never seen anything like it before. An Avatar comes out, you've never seen anything like it before. The Star Wars comes out, you've never seen anything like it before. And Indiana Jones comes out, is setting a new pace. So you can't really predict all the time. And yeah, some of these might be more what you call event films and more action packed and exciting, whereas some of these other films I'm talking about are more dramatic, much more slower, what they would regard, quote unquote, as art films. But yeah, so it's sort of just the situation we find ourselves in.
Mm. Okay.
Striking that balance of what you see as critically acclaimed and also commercially viable is a weird little trick that nobody really seems to have pulled off very successfully on both ends at the same time. But yeah, I wouldn't say more. You've had very amazing critically acclaimed films, but they've tanked commercially. So they are there. The problem now is, how do we get them out? How do we create an audience? How do we even show that there's a demand for these types of films? Because there's an audience. It might not be as big as the ones that want to watch the regular fare,
Yeah.
but it's definitely enough for those that wants to have a place and be in the conversation.
No, and I will definitely say there's an audience. Back in the day before Whiskey came out, I remember I would get his songs and I'm like, who's going to listen to this? Like, in my, mind, like, I was already thinking Alte, right? Like, that's what Nigeria needs. That's what we need to promote. Like, why do we need to listen to things like that? I remember my friend telling me, like, see, I don't know what you're talking about, but you don't know what you're talking about. There's an industry for this. And it took a while too to now see Alter do its thing. But clearly, there's also an industry for it. And so, my question to that is, obviously, filmmaking is also even pretty expensive. Do you think that now that maybe that we have some kind of in-way into streaming, that might help it be able to get that audience, like we're saying, be able to strike that balance? And maybe it's just that Nigerian film industry is still too young.
Okay, it's a bit of a mixed bag. I mean, see, like I said, we're in an interesting era in this democratization of everything era where there's so much access and so much flow of stuff across borders and technologies in your hands compared to before. Now, the US influence is a bit of a problem. Is one of the big problems as compared to the European or Asian influence. And why I say this is the US market is very structured in a kind of commercial and critically acclaimed and all that stuff. So it's very complexly developed and there's a bit of everything and it's something for everybody. We are not necessarily curating and trying to foster, let me say, an appreciation of art generally across board. Not just in film or television. So we're not even saying that, oh, this is our perspective of how people should enjoy films or the kind of films they should watch. There's no that kind of education. So people just watch whatever they see or whatever comes across them or whatever sort of program. There's this laissez-faire approach or attitude to this whole thing. What then happens is that our tastes are being molded by any and everything. As compared to maybe people growing up in Europe in the 70s or Asia at a certain time where you hear people talk about, oh, Korean cinema,
Right.
Southeast Asian cinema, Vietnamese cinema, or French New Wave, British cinema of this era, Scandinavian cinema, blah blah blah, the American what's it called, film school brats, this that. You hear all these movements and things, and of course, yeah, this is not necessarily on the commercial scale. It doesn't mean these guys didn't do stuff on the commercial side. They were really doing stuff on the artistic side, and there was this level of push, which is why you have film festivals.
Right.
All these things are meant to be a space to foster it. I mean, it's like you have book fairs, you have art fairs, and all this stuff. It's meant to sort of be a point where we are curating and we are giving stamps of approval and seals of approval, and then that then can go on into commercial stuff or not other stuff, right?
Right.
And it doesn't mean all the stuff that goes to the book fairs and win some kind of prize or award is what's going to be the highest bestseller or that kind of thing on the New York Times. But there's sort of critical material that we feel, oh, from a societal development point of view and human whatever development point of view, people should read this book or should engage with this thing, or it's a form of history, or we're archiving it, or this and that. It's different from the Gossip Girl type novel that sells.
Right.
And it's highest. You get what I mean?
Yeah.
It's not to say those are bad, but it's more about sort of utility and what that utility is for. So the issue we're having now is, where do we even go? And how do we go? Because the audience is fragmented.
Right.
And their taste is all over the place. And the creators as well are sort of there. Now, streaming is good, is an outlet, but the question is, who is your intended audience? Is it the local market? The people that consume these box office films that do big numbers that we are saying, oh, maybe are not the kind of films you want to see, you would see at the Oscars or at Cannes Film Festival and Berlinale and Venice and all this stuff. Are they the same audience?
No.
It's a big question. Is the audience local? Is it regional? Is it continental? Is it diaspora? Are there 2 or 3 different audiences and markets? Do we need to cater to these markets and audiences? Is there a place for a certain level of, let me call it, neo-African realism type of cinema that maybe the diaspora wants to engage with? Is that different from maybe a more aspirational cinema that those on the continent might want to engage with? So these are the kind of conversations that need to be happening.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because, I mean, like you said, there's a space for everything and everyone. And there's no formula. So it's a bit weird because everybody's trying what they think will work and the commercial imperatives. So it's like I can't really blame anyone per se. You're right that everybody or the market naturally is going to gravitate towards where the money is at or is perceived to be at. And that's why I sort of talked about the developmental aspect of things. But that's normal. So you almost have to have systems and institutions that are set up to be, not necessarily that they want you to make films and not make money, but that are not focused on the money, but are focused on the art. And those have to be structures that are governmental, non-governmental, industry, non-industry, and all the array of things are going to come together to make, let's say, let me call it the promotion and preservation of art a priority. And that's going to translate not just in film, but, music, cultural stuff, books,
You just okay, let people have an appreciation of this thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
So when you look at it from that point of view, you then say, how do we get there? What do we do? Like, so I mean, people are gonna, if I get money to make a film, I'm always gonna try and do what I think is gonna give me money back the
Mm.
quickest and the most realistic, right? Which is what everybody's basically doing.
Okay.
We just have a long way to go. I mean, okay, why are we not using doing our books and all that stuff? It comes down to a thing of costs and just people. Okay, so let me put it like this: let's assume that a film is being made or films are being made for 50 million. Some people make for 20 million, 30 million,
Mm-hmm.
whatever it's going to be, right? To option a book, get the rights and all that stuff, somebody might want to collect 10 million or something.
Mm.
And you only have a budget, maybe even if you're going to make a film of like 30 million. They're like, no, I can't give 30% of the budget to getting the rights for the book, not even writing the film. You get that kind
Mm.
of thing. So the industry is still playing at a level that, for lack of a better word, monetary wise is low. So you
Mm.
see, and not just low in the global sense, but low in the local sense. So yeah, you have a couple things that are playing at the higher level, but they're not that many. That's not the reality of the thing across board. So it's not going to be like in the US where you say, "Oh, how many films were made for like $20 million last year?" You could probably read off like, I don't know the statistics, but let's say something like 50 or 100, right? If I told you how many films were made for like 50 million naira last year, how many are you going to be able to name? You get what I
Mm.
mean? And is 50 million naira anything in filmmaking sense? No. Okay, how many were made for over 100 million? You get 100 million is like $120,000.
Mm-hmm.
The reality is that a lot of the elements of filmmaking cost the same. The only thing that's really going to change if you're trying to do it at the same level and quality is the human resources, which is just because of a factor of, let me say, cost of living in the places that the people are and the sort of labor and wage situations. But you want to use the same high end cameras, they're not going to be cheaper for you because you're Nigerian. So they're more expensive for you to have. You don't have the rental houses, the facilities, the infrastructure. So it's actually going to end up being more expensive for you
Mm.
in a lot of scenarios compared to if you were doing the $1 million film in the US. But there are places you can make that more affordable and their scenarios, but or cheaper here. But those are the realities. So if you gave me, I wanted to rent, let's say, an Arri Alexa or a Sony Venice 2, I'm going to be paying pretty much exactly the same
Mm.
or more here to have it for like a week than I would in New York, LA, or Atlanta.
Mm. Okay.
So how do you compete? So
Mm.
when you talk about the facilities, the studios, the sound stages, all these other things, they don't exist. So there's a whole. I mean, the creative side is good. We see it, right? But the way there's a whole ecosystem. So like with Nigerian music, you notice that Nigerian music is great, it's popping, everybody's shouting, but like almost like nothing is being done locally.
Yeah.
Like all the artists live abroad, they
Yep.
record all their music abroad, they do all their touring abroad, all their merchandise is produced and sold abroad. They can almost not do a show here. Maybe they try and do one in Christmas and it get messed up because of logistics and this, but we don't have any purpose built venues. You couldn't organize a
Mm.
properly run tour in Nigeria for like, oh, Whiskey, do
Mm.
5 cities, do 10 cities, P Square, do every state. Or let's say, like a 10 city tour is a big deal, right? Okay, 10,000
Yeah.
capacity, 20,000. It's not that the audience isn't there to fill the place, but you don't have the purpose built venues that can host a show of that caliber. That
Mm.
is rigged to make it easy to set up sound and the rest, which makes it cheaper. You have to go get a stadium, lock it down for like a week, start bringing everything, trying to figure out security. Oh, the place is not built for a flow of people. How do we manage the crowd? How do we do this? How do we do that? But you walk into New York and there's the Madison Square Garden, there's the Barclays Center. You're like, oh yeah, cool. And there's a Radio City. There's all that in New York. You go to LA, you have this one, that one, that one. London, oh, Burna Boy just did
Mm-hmm.
the Olympic Stadium, right?
Yeah.
Okay, Beyonce did Tottenham Hotspur Stadium. There's the Wembley Arena,
Yep.
great. There's the Wembley Stadium itself. There's the O2 Arena. There's all the other stuff around the O2. There's a Hammersmith Apollo. There's,
Yep.
I could name so many in London that it's just, and there could be like 20 shows going on at the same time. And
Mm.
there's companies, set up to service those shows. And, there's an industry behind the artists, behind the film, or behind the actors that we have not developed. It's that ecosystem. And that's what gives you the economic breakthrough that you're looking for in terms of as a country or an industry, because these are people that are constantly employed in events management, in logistics, in support services, in all the different things to make it run. So those things also enable you say, hey, I'm going to do a show, and me and you can organize a successful show in New York, even if it's for 5,000 people,
Yeah.
because everything we need, we don't have to basically set it up and create it ourselves. We can basically hire the right people and the right vendors and the right team to put it together. So those are like the deeper issues you have to look at.
I was going to ask you what your role as the National Secretary for the Association of Movie Producers and thematic lead for the Nigerian Economic Summit Group, kind of how that maybe plays into all of these things that you're talking about and the changes that are needed. But before we do that, I do have to ask this one I can't let go, which is, I'm sorry, we have the Nigerian Communications Commission or whatever. They're the ones
Yeah.
who ban everything, right? That's who bans everything.
Yes.
And like, I'm not sure why like they haven't banned Big Brother, but I'm just gonna leave people who like the Big Brother alone. But I wonder how much of that is the interplay of culture and religion that obviously still plays the lens through which they monitor and criticize, the Nigerian creative industry. And in some ways, I'm happy for it because I don't think I'm ready to see Nigerians in some kind of 50 Shades of Grey situation or anything like that. However, I guess from your creative side, how has the system, like you've been talking about, the system not supporting the creatives, how does that limit what you guys are able to do?
Okay, I made a statement where I said, oh, I think that's a very unfair statement around it's a funny one, but I think unfair around the guys, the NBC Broadcast Commission. So they're not the only ones that ban everything, or
Okay.
that potentially doesn't allow anything go out. But for all intents and purposes, from a broadcast point of view, let's say radio and TV, yeah, they're the ones that are like, yo, we're going to find your TV station and all that. But why I say
Mm-hmm.
it's a very unfair statement is Nigerian music wouldn't be what it is without them.
Mm.
And you probably wonder why.
Why?
They're the guys that, because they have the powers to ban everything, and the industry actually decided to have a conversation with them and say, hey, this is what our issues are, these are the challenges we have, and everybody comes together and thinks and talks. We're able to do something. What did they do? They basically applied or brought in regulation around local content.
Okay.
This regulation basically stipulated that 70% of everything that was played on radio had to be Nigerian local content.
Okay.
This is what gave the rise to Nigerian music now being played on radio and the rest and becoming popular. That eventually now led to Nigerian music competing locally with American music. Because if you talk to people in the 70s, 80s, 90s, they didn't listen to Nigerian music. It was all foreign
Right.
stuff. It was not like Nigeria. Like Nigerian music was there, but it was like the way you look at the
Mm-hmm.
way Alter when it first came up, like look at that in the corner, right? So that was where everything then started building steam to the point that you would then go to a club and it's literally just Nigeria. I mean, when we were growing up, it wasn't Nigerian music that people were playing in the club.
Nope.
It was Yankee, all the Yankee stuff, all the hip hop stuff, R&B stuff. But what
Right.
changed? You get what I mean? It was a build up. And it was
Okay.
their policy, one policy mixed with everybody else pushing. And, because the thing is, at the end of the day, when they say, oh, they have to play 70% Nigerian music, they have to find music to play. And they have to now play the
Mm.
best music. And you know that there's at least an opportunity created for you to showcase. So you then start trying to do music that's good because if it's very good, it'll get on radio.
Right.
And that people might listen. And then it goes from there, audiences get built, monetary value gets ascribed to it because you're popular, advertising, blah, blah, and the industry scales. So Burna Boy selling out London Stadium, 80,000, blah, blah, is directly related to the guys that ban everything.
Okay.
Basically
That's
banning
fair.
everything. So, but the point is, and coming back to your question about the NESG, National Secretary of AMP and all that stuff, is there is, and this is what there's a place for, basically the industry has to define what it wants to be. And when I say the industry, it's across the creative sort of industries and the creative economy, because I tend to float all around them, right? And that comes into saying that, who are you? What are you? What do you want to be? What do you want to achieve? Where do you want to go? How do you want to do it? What do you need? And who needs to do what to aid you? Is it talking to the financiers and the business people here in terms of engaging them to unlock what you need unlocked? Is it talking to government and regulators to say, hey, this is what we do, these are our challenges, this is how you can help us by either getting out of the way or doing stuff that's going to enable us, you could say, oh, take $200 million, go and make film. We don't really need money. This is what we need. This is the problem. If you do this, we can get 2 billion. Just do this thing.
Right.
You understand? You can still give us the 200 million, but do this because we can go and get like 2 billion, right? So stuff like that. So energy is a platform for that. The association is a platform for people in the industry, producers, anyways, talking and getting to sort of a convergence point on what we want and what we need. But these are the conversations that need to happen. And I know a lot of that is also happening on the music side because there are a lot of these organizations that are bringing around industry leaders, and these conversations have always happened. So on some of the stuff that have just happened from the industry, it's always come from these kinds of engagements. But there's increasingly that trying to mix in with, oh, this kind of policy we need, this kind of regulation we need, to also structure the marketplace so that it works for everybody. And everybody gets a fair share. So talking about stuff like intellectual property management, intellectual property law, royalties, it's a wide gamut. There's a lot of value. So yeah, that's what I've been doing as well.
Okay, awesome. So we'll give credit back to the. Did you wait? So is it Nigerian Communications Commission or Nigerian
No, no,
Broadcasting
no.
Commission?
No, no. So you have the Nigerian Broadcasting Commission. Then you also have the Nigerian
Okay.
Film and Video Censors Board, which are the ones that censor all the like film and whatever. But the Broadcast Commission
Okay.
is the one that's like radio ban or fine.
Okay.
And the
Okay.
best part is that when they find a song, it blows. So I probably need to give us some royalty.
Okay. So my final question from my end, because you get to ask me one question after this. What is your favorite TV show and movie? So both TV show and movie, past or current.
Okay. It's a tough one. No? I don't have an answer.
Okay, give me one of your favorite TV shows.
Okay. TV shows. There's a couple. I have my own kind of tastes. TV shows that I like.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, I love The Crown. I love Downton Abbey, Mad Men.
Mad Men. Okay.
Yeah, Mad Men. I mean, I enjoyed Breaking Bad. Would I classify that as something like I love? Like, it was good. I enjoyed it, but like, is it really down my alley like that? Like, I enjoyed it. I appreciated it. Everything is crazy. It's amazing. It's in top 5, definitely, if not 1 or 2. But yeah, stuff more like The Crown, Downton. I like period pieces. I like drama. I like all that stuff. Whatever. So like, obviously, Mad Men and the rest will feature. So I'll leave it there for now in terms of TV shows. Obviously, that's what comes to mind quickly. Film. Ooh, I might get a bit weird with the film. I mean, you obviously have the classics. I mean, in terms of newer stuff, it's here and there. I could give you a list of like 10 or 20.
Just give me 2.
Okay, I'll go out of my way to mention, what 2 films can I give you? One film will I keep on watching. Okay, I love Sound of Music.
Oh, okay.
I love Sound of Music. Let me give you another one. I don't know. I mean, it's tough. It's tough. Leave it with Sound of Music. I mean, I could tell you Apocalypse Now. I could tell you Godfather. I could tell you Vicky Cristina Barcelona. I could tell you Casino. Or I could tell you, there's a lot. I mean, between Scorsese, Francis Ford Coppola, Spielberg, there's quite a few of them. I mean, a few films have come out recently, and the rest of a couple of the other ones. A few films have come out recently that are cool, but like a lot of the things will probably gravitate back to some time. So, yeah, some of the classics.
So I've watched all those movies, not watched any of those shows. So yeah,
you don't watch any shows? Oh, you're missing out.
Nope.
Trust me, Downton Abbey is fantastic. The Crown. You've never watched The Crown? Nah, you're missing out. So in fact, I say something that like season 1 and 2 of The Crown for me is an education in television, in cinema, in television.
Okay.
And I feel those the first 2 episodes of not season 1 and 2, sorry, episode 1 and 2 of season 1.
Okay.
Jesus Christ. And like, see, by the time, even episode, just one of them, you feel like you've watched the whole series. After those first 2 episodes, like you get to the end of the second episode and you're like, Jesus, I finished the season. And you're like, oh, this is episode 2. Like it's so rich, it's so compressed, it's so compact, it's so tight. Like it's powerful stuff, and it's exclusively done. I love a good British drama.
Apparently, yeah.
I feel the Brits are the best or better filmmakers compared to their cousins across the pond. And I feel that especially when it comes to drama, you can almost not beat the Brits. Like it's hard. So even Downton Abbey, like, that was a while ago, but it's amazing. So there's a few things I'm remembering, like even TV shows and the rest and stuff, but I'll leave those ones away. But they have been, I like magical stuff. When I say magical, it's not maybe some high concept thing that just goes viral and popular, but there are things you watch and just it resonates with you and you connect with it and you get something. And I like that. I recommend Steve McQueen's anthology series of films that came out on Amazon.
I think I saw that. I'll look at it again.
You saw all of them?
I don't know if I saw all of them, but I definitely know I watched some of them for sure.
Yeah.
Okay, you get to ask me one question because I can't go without that.
What? Okay, I'll ask you the same question. What's your favorite film? What's your favorite TV series?
I should have expected that, but I'm still not ready. I don't know that I have a favorite of either. I'll be
Mm.
very honest. I like you, I love the classics. I love Sound of Music. There's also The King and I don't know if you remember that movie. Amazing, amazing, amazing. Like I don't know, it's just something about that and my childhood and I
It's
just love it.
cinema at the time. It's the magic. That's what I'm talking about. The
Mm,
fantastic stuff. Like,
yeah.
but this is the thing about cinema. You connect with it, and you imagine you're remembering this, and this is like obviously you watch so many things since then,
Oh
and
my
you're
god.
still this is still the first thing that comes out of your mouth. So
Exactly. Anywho's, thank you so much for doing this with me. Honestly, this has been absolutely amazing. And I've learned so much about the film industry than I would have ever thought. And obviously, just giving me a little bit more grace to understand what the Nigerian industry is going through. And maybe even, obviously, I would say a lot of Africa's.
my pleasure.
Thank you for joining me in today's episode. Just like you would share with friends about a great book you read, don't forget to share this if you enjoyed it. Connect with us on IG and Twitter at TWWPcast and get details on the website at worldwithoutpeople.org. And hey, remember to make loving others the story of your life. Until next time, this is The World Without People.